The water was cold. It was the first thing I remembered, the biting, suffocating cold that stole the breath from my lungs and the light from my eyes. In that final agonizing moment of my previous life, as wild dogs tore at my flesh and my mother's desperate screams echoed in my ears, I had wished for one thing: a beginning. A chance to do it all over again. I got my wish. I choked, my body convulsing as river water flooded my mouth and nose. My eyes flew open, stinging in the murky green gloom of the Luo River. Panic, pure and instinctual, seized my limbs, thrashing against the current that pulled me down. But beneath the panic, a terrifying, brilliant clarity erupted in my mind. I have been here before. This was the day. The day my life had ended the first time. The day Elias Vance had saved me. Someone's fallen in. Hurry, save her, a voice shouted from the shore, a familiar echo from a forgotten past. The sound of a splash, violent and close, jolted me. I turned my head, the water streaming from my hair, and saw him. Elias Vance. Dressed in his crisp military uniform, his face a mask of determined heroism as he swam toward me with powerful, sure strokes. My heart didn't flutter with gratitude this time. It seized with a cold, sharp dread that was sharper than the river's chill. Oh, not again. Never again. Horror lent me strength I didn't know I possessed. I twisted in the water away from him and began to paddle. It was an ungainly, desperate dog paddle, but it was movement. It was defiance. Miss, you're swimming the wrong way. Turn around quickly. The villagers on the shore, thinking I was disoriented, cried out in alarm. They didn't understand. Every clumsy stroke away from him was deliberate. Elias, blinded by the water I was turning up, probably thought I was just flailing in panic. Liliana Reed, don't panic. I'm here to save you, he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. A shiver that had nothing to do with the cold water ran down my spine. He spoke. In my past life he had been silent during this entire exchange, a strong, silent savior. Now he was using my name. He was trying to establish a connection, to weave the first thread of the narrative that had bound me to him. The dread solidified into a chilling certainty. He too has been reborn. His next words confirmed it. His strokes, so confident and steady, faltered for a second as he took in my coordinated, if frantic movement away from him. His voice was laced with shock. You can swim. In my past life I had been a genuine victim, nearly unconscious from drowning. He had believed me helpless. Now he saw a woman fighting for her life and fighting in the opposite direction. Panic surged through me, a different kind of drowning. If he had all his memories too, then he was even more dangerous. He wouldn't let his pawn escape the board so easily. I had to gamble. Taking one deep, ragged breath, I dove beneath the surface. The world became a muffled, green silence. I kicked, propelling myself through the murky water, away from where he had last seen me. I swam until my lungs burned, ready to explode. Suddenly, a vice-like grip closed around my ankle. It felt like a venomous snake coiling around my leg, pulling me back, pulling me down. My heart hammered against my ribs. Is he trying to drown me? To force the narrative of being my savior? I kicked wildly, my heel connecting with something solid, his hand, his arm, I didn't know. I didn't care. I fought with the fury of a woman who had already died once. His grip loosened. I shot toward the surface, breaking through with a gasping, ragged inhale. I didn't look back. I paddled with every last ounce of strength toward the riverbank, my arms and legs feeling like lead. She swam up on her own, a sharp-eyed villager shouted. I dragged myself onto the muddy shore, collapsing on all fours, coughing up river water. I was shivering violently, my clothes clinging to me like a second skin. I heard Elias surface behind me, his breathing heavy. I forced myself to look back. He was pulling himself onto the bank, his uniform soaked and dripping. His eyes, dark and intense, found me. They were not the eyes of a humble hero. They were filled with a complicated, stormy emotion, shock, frustration, and a calculating anger. He took a step toward me, his hand outstretched. Liliana Reed, he said, his voice low, trying to sound calm but a hard edge beneath it. I didn't expect you to be such a strong swimmer. Fear prickled at my scalp. I scrambled backward, clutching at the arm of a nearby auntie who was staring with wide eyes. Don't touch me, I shouted, my voice raw and trembling. Elias froze, a flush of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. With so many villagers watching, he had no choice but to lower his hand. The narrative was already fracturing. I stood up, my legs wobbling, but I stood on my own. He stepped forward again, his persistence terrifying. "Sir, I don't know you. Please respect yourself," I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. Rejected twice in front of everyone, his face darkened. He was a proud man, a soldier used to respect. This public defiance was a blow. He quickly crafted a new narrative, one of misunderstood chivalry. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice projecting for the benefit of the crowd. "I'm a soldier. I was desperate to save you. When I saw you sinking underwater, I may have overstepped and startled you." His words did their work. A few men in the crowd whistled and chuckled. "A hero saving a damsel, huh?" one called out. "Guess you'll have to repay him with your heart." My nausea returned. He was so shameless, so quick to twist the situation. I couldn't let him control the story. "Sir, you shouldn't speak carelessly," I retorted, my voice cutting through the murmurs. "The water was murky down there. How can you be sure the person you touched was me?" Just then another villager pointed. "Girl, look at that. He risked his life to save you. He even scratched his hand. If it weren't for him, you would have drowned already." I looked at Elias's hand. A fresh, red scratch marred his skin. I remembered the desperate kick underwater. I had indeed made contact. "Who said I was drowning?" I challenged, turning to face the crowd. "Besides, there are plenty of sharp rocks underwater. His hand could have been cut by those. And I was the first one to reach the surface and climb ashore. I saved myself. How is that him saving me?" The crowd fell silent, the simple logic of my statement dousing their romantic notions. Elias looked utterly embarrassed, his carefully constructed heroism crumbling before his eyes. "Liliana Reed," he said, trying to regain footing. "We're from the same village. My name is Elias Vance. I was only worried you'd catch a cold. I just wanted to walk you home." His words were a trap. He was trying to stall me, to get me alone, to re-establish some control. I couldn't let that happen. The terror of being near him, of him possibly grabbing me and creating a scene I couldn't explain, was too great. Without another word, I turned and ran. I heard him call my name, heard him try to follow, but one of the older aunties, intrigued by the handsome soldier, pulled him aside, peppering him with questions about his life in the army, if he had a wife. I didn't look back. I ran, my wet clothes slapping against my skin, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I ran past the curious stares, past the familiar lanes of my village, all the way to the entrance. I had to get home. I had to get to safety. And there, at the village entrance, my blood ran cold. There she was. Cassandra. Her name in this life, but the same viper from my last. She was standing with the postman, a familiar document envelope in her hand. A document I had waited for my entire previous life, a document she had stolen from me. My eyes widened in a fury that was years in the making. I pointed a trembling, water-wrinkled finger at her and shouted, my voice echoing with the pain of a stolen past. "Cassandra! How dare you sign for my college admission letter?" Cassandra flinched as if I'd struck her. Her whole body went rigid and she stared at me, her pretty face a mask of pure shock. "Liliana Reed? What are you doing here?" Her surprise was genuine. In her timeline, in the narrative she and Elias had crafted, I should have been at the river, being rescued, my reputation being thoroughly compromised, setting the stage for my entrapment. My presence here, dripping wet and furious, was a variable they hadn't accounted for. Seizing the moment of her stupor, I lunged forward. My fingers, cold and stiff, closed around the thick manila envelope. I yanked it from her grasp. The feel of it in my hand sent a jolt through me. This simple packet of paper held a future I had been cheated out of. My future. Cassandra's arms were suddenly empty. She glared at me, her shock melting into resentment. "That's mine. Give it back," she demanded, her voice shrill. I let out a cold, sharp laugh that made the postman, a gangly young man looking deeply uncomfortable, take a step back. "Yours, Cassandra? Are you sure about that?" I held the envelope to my chest, a precious, hard-won treasure. Only then did she realize her mistake. The postman was still here. She had been caught in the act. She stammered, scrambling for an excuse. "I was just trying to help you by holding on to it first. I heard you fell into the river, so I thought you wouldn't have time to come." Something in her words snagged in my mind. A flaw in her hasty lie. "Something feels off," I said, my voice dangerously calm. This place was nowhere near the river. How did you know I fell into the water? Cassandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No sound came out. She looked from me to the postman, her eyes wide with panic. I fixed my gaze on the postman. And you? How could you hand over my college admission letter to someone else so casually? This is a federal document. The postman's face darkened with defensiveness. She stopped me and said it was hers, so I gave it to her. It's not my job to interrogate everyone. Suppressing the urge to scream, I retorted, then let's open it right now. Let's see if this admission letter has my name, Liliana Reed, or Cassandra's. If it's mine, I'll report you for giving my college admission letter to someone else without my permission. That's a serious offense. The postman paled, finally realizing the gravity of the situation and that I wasn't some meek village girl he could brush off. Cassandra's face turned a sickly shade of white. Suddenly, with a desperate shriek, she lunged at me. Her fingers, like claws, snatched at the envelope. She managed to grab a corner and pulled, trying to wrest it from my grasp. Liliana Reed, this is my college admission letter. If it's going to be opened, I'll be the one to open it. Shocked by her audacity, I held on tight. Cassandra, you dare tear it and see what happens. I yelled, my own fury rising. If she couldn't have my future, she would rather destroy it. I could see it in her wild eyes. Too weak to overpower me directly, she panicked and screamed for help. Postman, help me. The postman hesitated, looking utterly lost. Before he could act, a voice thundered from the distance, a voice that turned my blood to ice. Liliana Reed, let go of Cassandra. Elias Vance came running, his face a thundercloud of fury. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He simply yanked me away from Cassandra with a violent force that sent me stumbling. I lost my footing on the loose gravel at the edge of the road and tumbled backward into the muddy ditch by the rice field. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. I landed hard, the cold, thick ooze seeping through my already wet clothes. For a moment I just lay there, stunned, staring up at the sky. Cassandra, badly shaken, scurried to Elias's side. She leaned close, whispering anxiously, "What's going on? Why did you come here?" His face was ugly with frustration. "I didn't expect her to know how to swim," he muttered, the words low but I caught them. Clutching the now mud-spattered envelope to my chest like a shield, I climbed out of the ditch. My forehead throbbed where I'd hit a stone on the way down. I wiped at it with the back of my hand, and it came away smeared with blood. I cursed him in my heart. Elias Vance was truly vile. Ignoring them right there in front of their stunned faces, I tore open the envelope. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From a desperate, burning hope. I pulled out the letter inside. There was, in neat official print, my name, Liliana Reed, and below it the name of the Provincial Police Academy. Tears of vindication and a profound, soul-deep grief for the life I never got to live stung my eyes. I looked up, holding the letter out for them all to see. "Cassandra," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "You stole my college admission letter. And now that I've caught you, you want to tear it up. If you can't take my future for yourself, you'd rather destroy it." Cassandra, trembling as Elias held her up, looked at me with a new kind of fear. The fear of someone whose carefully laid plans were unraveling spectacularly. "Liliana, I really thought this was mine," she whined, trying on a mask of pitiful misunderstanding. "I wasn't trying to tear it up. I just opened it too quickly. Since it's yours, I was only holding on to it for you. It's not like I wasn't going to give it back." I sneered, the sound ugly and raw. "Cassandra, you and I don't even know each other. What right did you have to hold on to it for me?" Then I turned my unflinching gaze on Elias, my eyes sharp as knives, as if I could devour him whole. "And another thing, how is it such a coincidence? I fell into the water and you just happened to be nearby. We don't even know each other yet. In this freezing weather, you were so willing to risk your life to save me." Elias pressed his lips together, his eyes flickering as he searched for a plausible lie. "I just happened to pass by. I heard someone had fallen in, so I jumped. I'm a soldier. Saving people is my duty." The postman, seeing the situation escalating into a drama he wanted no part of, climbed onto his bicycle, ready to make his escape. But I was not letting him off that easily. I quickly stepped forward and grabbed the handlebars. "You're not going anywhere. Cassandra tried to steal my college admission letter. You'll testify for me or I'll report you for handing it to her." Elias strode over, his tall frame blocking me, and signaled to the postman with his eyes. Liliana Reed let go of his bike. He still has mail to deliver. Cassandra rushed forward, trying to pry my fingers from the handlebars. Let him go, you lunatic. Anger and despair surged inside me. They were a team closing ranks. For a moment, standing there alone against them, I felt a flicker of the hopelessness that had defined my first life. Then a voice, weathered and fierce as a summer storm, cut through the tension. You little brats think you can bully my daughter? Tears hot and sudden spilled down my cheeks. My mother had arrived. She took in the scene in a single sweeping glance. My bloodied forehead, my drenched and mud-caked clothes, my crying face, and the letter clutched in my hand. Her fury, a force of nature I had dearly missed, exploded. She stormed forward and, with a hand calloused from a lifetime of working the rice fields, slapped Cassandra hard across the face. The crack echoed in the sudden silence. You shameless hussy! How dare you bully my Liliana? Cassandra's grip on the bicycle loosened as the slap spun her halfway around. Elias quickly caught her, but the side of her face was already swelling, a bright red handprint stark against her skin. He turned livid, his soldier's composure finally cracking. You old shrew. How dare you hit someone? Don't you know that's against the law? But my mother didn't back down an inch. She planted her fists on her hips, a small, wiry woman facing down a soldier. The matchmaker who had tagged along with her, having heard the commotion, saw things spiraling and hurried to smooth things over. Oh my! Isn't this Elias Vance? Why are you and your ex-wife arguing with Liliana? This must all be a misunderstanding. Cassandra lowered her head, covering her face, but I nearly laughed at the absurdity of it all. A misunderstanding? I said, my voice clear and strong now that my mother was here. Mom, Cassandra tried to steal my college admission letter, and Elias came here deliberately to help her. Then I fixed my gaze back on Elias. You said hitting someone is against the law. Well, you just shoved me and split open my forehead. Doesn't that make you guilty too? Elias's temple throbbed, a vein pulsing with barely contained anger. The matchmaker froze, looking between us. Elias, she said, her voice hesitant, you asked me to propose this match for you. Now you've struck Liliana? This marriage will never happen. You'll turn her family into enemies instead. My mother, still burning with anger, shielded me with her arm and jabbed a finger at Elias. So you're Elias, huh? 1 minute you're asking a matchmaker to arrange a marriage for my daughter, the next you're helping your ex-wife steal her admission letter. You two are divorced, yet you're still paving the way for her? How dare you team up to bully my Liliana? I'll fight you to the end. The memory of being kicked into the ditch flashed in my mind. This was my chance to sever the tie completely. Mom, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm going to college. Even if I ever marry, it'll only be after I graduate. And besides, I added, looking straight at Elias and Cassandra, I don't think Elias and Cassandra were ever divorced in the first place. Elias's face went pale. He hurried to deny it. Liliana Reed, today you fell in the water and I tried to save you. As soon as you climbed ashore you ran. When I caught up you were hitting Cassandra. Now you claim she stole your admission letter. That's slander. I'm a soldier. Accusing me of a fake divorce is dangerous. You'd better think about the consequences. I met his eyes, my gaze as cold as the river water. Whether or not you two actually divorced, you know the truth in your own hearts. You say you saved me, but the entire village saw I saved myself. It had nothing to do with you. And yet you kept trying to hold me and touch me. You call it slander when I say you two never divorced? Then let's go to the civil affairs office and check. Do you and Cassandra dare? The panic that flashed across both their faces was plain to see. Their guilty expressions told the whole story. My mother finally understood. The pieces clicked into place in her mind. So that's it, she breathed, her voice filled with a new cold fury. You never divorced at all. You wanted to trap my daughter, stain her reputation so the matchmaker could push the marriage through. You just wanted to trick Liliana into becoming a servant for your 3 sons and a nurse for your paralyzed old mother. She turned her glare on Cassandra. And you, shameless woman, you tried to steal my daughter's future and go to college in her place. How vicious can you be? Just then more villagers arrived, drawn by the escalating shouting. And behind them, to my immense relief, were 2 officers from the local police station. My heart leapt. Finally, a semblance of order. "Mom," I said, pointing at Elias and Cassandra. "Let's call the police. We'll report Elias Vance for marriage fraud." Elias panicked at first, then a strange, confident smile touched his lips. He looked at the approaching officers and his posture relaxed. "Perfect timing," he said. "My childhood buddy works at this police station." Cassandra, who had been frightened before, immediately regained her confidence. She put on a pitiful expression and looked at the senior of the two officers. "Officer, thank goodness you're here," she simpered. "Liliana Reed and her mother assaulted me and my brothers. I want to file a report." The game had just changed and Elias thought he held all the cards. But I was no longer the naive girl who would crumble under pressure. I had the truth and I had a mother who would fight for me with everything she had. The battle for my future was just beginning. The officer Elias had smiled at, a man with a thick mustache and a bored expression, stepped forward. All right, break it up. What's all this shouting about?" His eyes flickered to Elias and I saw a faint, almost imperceptible nod pass between them. My heart sank. Elias hadn't been bluffing. Cassandra immediately launched into a tearful performance. "Officer Wong. Look what they did to me." She pointed a dramatic finger at her red, swollen cheek. "Liliana Reed snatched my mail and when I tried to get it back her mother attacked me. Then Liliana hit my brothers." Her two younger brothers, lanky teenagers who had been hovering at the edge of the crowd, suddenly clutched their noses, though I noticed there wasn't a drop of blood on them. I didn't wait for Officer Wong to take control. I stepped forward holding up my college admission letter. "Officer, my name is Liliana Reed. This is my college admission letter addressed to me." Cassandra Hale intercepted it from the postman and was attempting to steal it. When I confronted her, she and Elias Vance became physically aggressive. Elias shoved me into that ditch, which is how I cut my forehead. "I want to file a report for theft and assault." Officer Wong sighed as if we were a personal inconvenience. He said, she said, "Sounds like a simple village squabble. Miss Hale says it was her letter. It has my name on it." I insisted, thrusting the letter toward him. He barely glanced at it. "Could be a mistake. The Education Bureau makes errors all the time." My mother gasped in outrage. "Are you blind? Or just bought and paid for?" Officer Wong's face hardened. "Watch your tongue, woman, or I'll take you in for slander." Just then, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" A second officer stepped forward. He was younger, with a clean-shaven, intelligent face and a bearing that was ramrod straight. He hadn't spoken until now, simply observing. His uniform was identical to Officer Wong's, but he wore it differently. There was an air of quiet command about him. Officer Wong shifted uncomfortably. "Nothing to worry about, Director Young. Just a domestic dispute." "Director?" My eyes snapped to the younger man. This was no ordinary patrol officer. Director Young's gaze swept over the scene, taking in my bloody forehead, my mud-soaked clothes, the admission letter in my hand, and the defiant, tear-streaked faces of Cassandra and Elias. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "I heard someone mention a college admission letter and assault," he said, his voice even and measured. "That doesn't sound like a simple domestic dispute to me." He turned to me. "Miss, you were saying?" A spark of hope ignited in my chest. I repeated my story, clearly and concisely, pointing out the postman who was still trying to sneak away. He handed my letter to Cassandra without verifying her identity. I finished. Director Young turned his gaze to the postman, who squirmed under the intensity. "Is this true?" The postman stammered. She said she was Liliana Reed. How was I to know? "And you," Director Young turned to Elias. "You're a soldier?" Elias straightened up, snapping to a semblance of attention. "Sir. Corporal Elias Vance. I was attempting to mediate and was assaulted for my efforts." "I see," Director Young said, his tone neutral. He then looked at Cassandra's brothers. "And you too? You were assaulted." They nodded vigorously, still clutching their noses. Director Young's lips quirked in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Interesting. I see no blood, no swelling. And you," he looked back at me, "have a verifiable injury and a document that proves your claim." He then addressed the crowd. "Did anyone see what happened? The initial shove." The villagers who had been happy to gossip moments before, now shuffled their feet, suddenly reluctant to get involved. The balance of power had shifted and they weren't sure which side was safe. It was the matchmaker, her reputation on the line, who finally spoke up. Director, I saw Elias grab Liliana's arm quite forcefully. She did stumble into the ditch after that. Elias shot her a venomous look. That's enough for me, Director Young said decisively. This requires a formal statement from all parties. You'll all need to come down to the station. Cassandra's face drained of color. Our local station? She asked, a thread of hope in her voice. She glanced at Officer Wong. No, Director Young said, his voice leaving no room for argument. To my station. In the neighboring district. I was passing through on my way home and decided to see what the commotion was about. It seems my detour was fortuitous. It will avoid any conflicts of interest. Elias's confident mask finally cracked. Comrade, with all due respect, procedure dictates. I am aware of procedure, Corporal, Director Young interrupted, his voice cool. And procedure also dictates that when a potential case of document theft and assault arises, it is investigated thoroughly and impartially. Since the complainant, he nodded at me, has made the report to me, I will be processing it. You will all accompany me. Now. The journey to the neighboring district's police station was a silent, tense affair. My mother held my hand tightly, her grip both fearful and fiercely protective. Elias and Cassandra sat stiffly, their minds whirring, while Cassandra's mother and brothers followed in a separate vehicle, their earlier bravado replaced by a sullen anxiety. At the station, which was cleaner and more orderly than our local one, we were separated. Director Young, who introduced himself as Nathan Young, personally took my and my mother's statements. He listened intently, his eyes never leaving my face as I recounted not just the events of today, but the broader picture. The chance meeting at the river, the pressure to marry, the fake divorce. I can't prove the divorce is fake, I admitted. Not without going to the Civil Affairs Bureau. But their reaction when I suggested it was all the proof I need. Nathan Young nodded, making a note. We can look into that. For now, let's focus on the actionable offenses. The theft of the letter and the assault. After our interview, he left us in a small, quiet room with 2 cups of tea. Time stretched on. I could hear the raised voices of Cassandra and her family from down the hall, and the lower, calmer tones of Nathan Young and Elias. Finally, the door opened and Nathan Young entered alone. His expression was serious. Liliana, your mother, he began. The Hale family is claiming you and your mother assaulted them. They're charging you with intentional injury. In cases like this, we usually treat it as mutual fighting. However, he held up a hand as my mother started to protest. Elias did injure you and Cassandra did attempt to steal your admission letter. The postman, once separated from the group, confirmed that Cassandra explicitly identified herself as you. Given that, and since you're insisting on filing, the path forward is typically hospital evaluation, reconciliation, and compensation. I had expected a long, bitter fight. But Nathan's words suggested a quicker, if imperfect, resolution. They want to settle? I asked. He nodded. I believe so. They want this to go away quietly, especially Elias. A public scandal would not be good for his military career. As if on cue, the door opened and Elias entered. He looked strained, the image of the confident soldier completely gone. Liliana, he said, his voice tight. Let's not drag this out. I'll give you 250 yuan as compensation for this misunderstanding. I let out a cold, sharp laugh that echoed in the small room. Elias, who are you insulting? I rose from my chair and turned to leave, pulling my mother with me. I was bluffing, but I had to seem willing to burn it all down. He panicked. 300, he blurted out. That's all I have right now. Memories of my past life flashed before me. The back-breaking labor, the contempt, the lonely, painful death. This wasn't about money. It was about justice. It was about making them bleed in the only way they understood. I didn't slow down. 600, he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. That's everything I've got. I stopped in my tracks. 600 yuan was a colossal sum. It was a clear admission of guilt, a desperate bid to make me compliant. I turned back, my eyes sharp. Elias, is that 600 yuan compensation for the injury you caused me? Or is it to make me drop the charges against Cassandra for stealing my admission letter? Elias's face flushed with anger. Liliana Reed, don't be so ungrateful. 600 yuan isn't a small amount. Do you know how much my monthly salary is? Do you know how much your family makes in an entire year? I met his glare without flinching. If you want me to forgive Cassandra, then she needs to come and say it herself. And she will compensate me separately for the theft. Elias looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He slumped in defeat and left the room. A few minutes later he returned with Cassandra and her mother in tow. They looked like they were being led to the gallows. I faced Cassandra directly, no longer the scared girl from the riverbank, but a woman demanding what was owed. Elias offered me 600 yuan for reconciliation. You stole my admission letter. How do you plan to compensate me? The word reconciliation made both Cassandra and her mother explode. 600 yuan. Elias, where did you get that kind of money? Her mother shrieked. Elias hurried to calm them, but I interrupted sweetly. Cassandra, if you want my forgiveness, it's not impossible. Compensate me and apologize. Publicly. Cassandra and her mother pulled long faces. We don't have money, her mother spat. We'd rather die than pay. At most, we can give you another 100. I didn't get angry. Instead, I turned to Nathan Young. Director, I've changed my mind. I request an official case be filed. I want Cassandra Hale charged with theft. This was the gambit. I was calling their bluff. Elias panicked. He was due to return to the army, where a promotion was on the line. A formal charge would end it all. 1,000, he shouted, the words torn from him. 1,000 yuan. From Laura and me together. My mother, who had been sipping her water, choked. Her eyes were wide as saucers. 1,000 yuan was a fortune, a life-changing amount. Cassandra nearly lost her mind. Elias, you only make a few dozen a month. Our whole family barely makes that in a year. How can we pay them so much? I calmly added the final nail. And Cassandra must apologize with a loudspeaker in the village, admitting she stole my admission letter. At that, Cassandra's mother jumped to her feet. Liliana Reed, impossible. If you want my daughter to apologize to you privately, fine. But in front of the whole village, never. How would we ever hold our heads up again? Elias held a sobbing Cassandra, whispering something urgent into her ear. I could guess what he said. If she doesn't forgive you, the station will detain you for at least 15 days. Your reputation will be ruined. And if they verify our marriage is still legal, I'll be ruined too. The army will discharge me. Humiliation warred with desperation on Cassandra's face. Finally, she lifted her head, whispered to her mother, and then nodded, the motion one of utter defeat. Nathan Young saw the agreement and brought over the formal reconciliation paperwork. Since you've reconciled, sign here and the case will be closed. I picked up the pen but hesitated. I looked at Elias and Cassandra. You've promised compensation and an apology, but neither has been carried out yet. I can't sign now. Once everything is fulfilled, then I'll sign. Elias had no choice. He took a still sobbing Cassandra and her furious mother out of the room to persuade them. They returned an hour later looking utterly drained. We'll go to the credit union and withdraw the money right now, Elias said, his voice hollow. My mother and I waited patiently. When they returned, Elias handed over a thick stack of banknotes. My mother's hands trembled as she accepted it. So thrilled, she licked her fingers and moistened them to count each bill one by one. Liliana, I counted it, she finally said, her voice awed. It's 1,000. Not a penny less. Cassandra and her mother stared at the stack of money in her hands, their faces twisted with such heartache they looked physically ill, clutching their heads as if in pain. Elias's face was dark as storm clouds as he fixed his eyes on me. Liliana, Cassandra will apologize tomorrow as promised. If you don't trust her, you can come see it yourself. I wasn't worried she would go back on her word. Not with this much at stake for Elias. I picked up the pen and signed my name on the document, officially closing the case. My mother and I left the police station first, the weight of the money in her bag feeling like the weight of my stolen past finally returned. We were ready to finally go home and sleep soundly. For the first time since I'd opened my eyes in the Luo River, I felt like I could truly breathe. The battle was won. But I knew the war with my past was not yet over. The next morning, I was woken by my mother bustling into my room, her face flushed with indignation. Liliana, get up quickly. I just went to Cassandra's house. Her mother said she wasn't home. I even looked around the place. She's long gone. That shameless girl went back on her word. I sat up, but a strange calm settled over me. I had expected this. Cassandra's quick agreement the day before had Elias's fingerprints all over it. A stalling tactic. "Stay calm, Mom," I said, swinging my legs out of bed. I had a feeling she'd try to run. After a quick breakfast, my mother and I hurried over to Elias's house, only to find it locked up and silent. A neighbor confirmed that he too had left early that morning. But I was prepared. While my mother had been sleeping soundly, dreaming of my college future, I had been busy. In the quiet of the night, by the dim light of an oil lamp, I had written a formal, detailed report letter. I described how Elias Vance, a soldier, had staged a fake divorce with Cassandra Hale. I outlined their plot to have her brothers kick me into the river, his pretended rescue to compromise my reputation, and their ultimate goal of trapping me into a life of servitude while Cassandra stole my college admission letter. I mentioned that the police had already opened a case, lending credibility to my claims. This letter had been mailed a week earlier, addressed directly to the Army unit's disciplinary committee and Elias's company commander. I had calculated the timing perfectly. In the days that followed, I shed the skin of the victim and embraced the rhythm of my old new life. I helped my mother feed the chickens, their clucking a comforting, mundane sound. I worked alongside her in the fields, the rich earth cool under my fingers, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in 2 lifetimes. I was simply waiting happily for school to start. The calm was broken about a week later. I was knee-deep in the rice paddy transplanting green shoots, when my mother came running down the path, her face a mixture of alarm and excitement. "Liliana, stop planting seedlings. That director from last time is here again, and he brought Elias's superiors with him." My heart gave a steady, determined thud. This was it. I washed the mud from my hands and legs and followed my mother back to our humble home. As I stepped into the yard, I saw Nathan Young in his uniform, looking even more authoritative than before. Flanking him were 2 other men with the unmistakable, upright bearing of career soldiers, their uniforms crisp and their eyes sharp. Nathan smiled when he saw me, a genuine warm smile that reached his eyes. "Liliana Reed, last time you said someone deliberately kicked you into the water. After our investigation, Cassandra's 2 brothers confessed." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Nathan continued, his voice matter-of-fact. "It was Elias and Cassandra's scheme. They spread rumors of a fake divorce, then had Cassandra's brothers push you into the river. Elias pretended to pass by and dove in to save you. His goal was to let the whole village see him holding you so rumors would spread. That way, no one could persuade your mother otherwise, and Cassandra could take your admission letter and go to college in your place." My mother was so furious she slammed her broom against the ground, sending chickens scattering. "Those blood-sucking dogs. Last time I cursed them far too lightly." One of the soldiers beside Nathan, a man with a kind but firm face, spoke up. "Comrade Liliana, I'm Captain Miller, Elias's company commander. I received your report letter and immediately decided to come in person." His voice was heavy with disappointment. Elias was about to be promoted to squad leader, but if he really did such things, he's unfit. The men under my command cannot be people of such vile character. I came here specifically to investigate the matter thoroughly. Once the facts are clear, he will be dealt with strictly. Hearing his words, I felt a deep sense of respect. This was the integrity I had believed in, the righteousness that Elias had so thoroughly betrayed. After a few more questions, assuring them I would be available to testify if needed, Nathan and the company commander prepared to leave. As he passed me, Nathan gave me a knowing look. "Liliana Reed," he said, his voice low. "Did you already guess that Cassandra wouldn't apologize and that Elias would run away with her?" I put on my most innocent face, though a small smile played on my lips. "Director, I was forced. Elias dared to fake a divorce, even plotted to push me into the water to trick me into marriage. Reporting him was what he deserved." Nathan laughed, a warm, rich sound. "I heard you were admitted to the Provincial Police Academy. What a coincidence. I graduated from there too. So that was why he had seemed so familiar, why I had felt an instinctual trust toward him. Not only was he upright and dependable, but we were also connected by this shared thread. A sense of destiny, warm and promising, fluttered in my chest." My mother, who had been listening while pretending to feed the chickens, heard this and her face lit up like a lantern. She scurried over. Director, how old are you? Are you married yet? I nearly died of embarrassment. Mom. I hissed, my cheeks burning. But Nathan didn't seem to mind. He smiled warmly at her. Auntie, I'm 28. I dated a girl from the city in college, but we broke up. My mother's been busy trying to arrange matches for me ever since. Then he turned his smile to me, and it felt like the sun had come out from behind a cloud. Liliana, I suppose that makes me your senior. If you ever need help, just come find your upperclassmen. My mother was overjoyed. Liliana's father died of tuberculosis when she was 8. I raised her alone as a village woman, so she started school late. She's 20 this year. By that count, you two aren't far apart in age. The more I listened, the more I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. Muttering a hasty goodbye, I bolted into the house, my heart pounding for an entirely new reason. A few days later, as I knew she would, Cassandra returned to the village. Defeated, humiliated, and with no other choice. With a loudspeaker in her hand, she apologized all the way from her house to mine, her voice echoing through the entire village. I, Cassandra Hale, admit that I tried to steal Liliana Reed's college admission letter. I am sorry for my actions. Everyone came out to watch the commotion, their whispers a satisfying symphony of judgment. She told anyone who would listen that Elias Vance had not only lost his promotion to squad leader but had also been discharged from the army ahead of schedule. Too ashamed to return to the village, he had gone to the city to work as a laborer. He had left Cassandra behind to care for his 3 sons and look after his paralyzed mother. The irony was so perfect it was poetic. She was now trapped in the exact life they had designed for me. By September, with my bags packed and my heart light, my mother sent me off with a smile to the provincial capital for college. I was free. I had my future in my hands, paid for by the ruins of their conspiracy. But the past I was learning has long clinging tendrils. And one of them was waiting for me at the gates of my new beginning. The Provincial Police Academy was a world of crisp lines, shouted orders, and the scent of polished floors and ambition. It was a world I had only dreamed of in my past life, a world of order and justice that stood in stark contrast to the chaotic betrayal I had known. I threw myself into it, the physical training, the dense legal textbooks, the intricate drills. Every aching muscle, every late night spent studying by flashlight was a prayer of gratitude for this second chance. For a few months, I existed in a blissful bubble of routine and purpose. The shadows of my past life seemed to recede, fading like bad dreams in the bright light of this new day. I made friends, girls with loud laughs and fierce loyalties. I earned the grudging respect of my instructors. I was building a life, brick by solid brick. The bubble burst on a crisp autumn afternoon. I was walking back from the library, a stack of books in my arms, laughing with a classmate about our notoriously stern tactics instructor. A figure detached itself from the shadow of the main gate and stepped into my path. My laughter died in my throat. The books in my arms felt suddenly like a ton of bricks. It was Elias. But it wasn't the Elias I remembered from either life. The proud soldier, the cunning plotter. Both were gone. This man was a hollowed-out shell. Months of hard labor had carved new lines into his face. A patchy, unkempt beard covered his jaw, and dark circles bruised the skin beneath his eyes. His clothes, once a crisp uniform, were now a patched and faded workman's shirt and trousers, hanging loosely on a frame that had lost its military bearing. He looked like a stray dog, hungry and desperate. "Liliana Reed," he said, his voice raspy as if from disuse. "I drive trucks now. I happened to pass by your school and wanted to see you." He held out a plastic bag, its contents visible through the translucent film. It was a bizarre, pathetic assortment. Rice crackers, a box of milk, a few white rabbit candies, some lollipops, spicy strips, a single banana and a small, slightly bruised apple. A child's idea of a gift, or a man who had nothing better to offer. I eyed him wearily, my guard slamming back into place. "Sorry, we're not that close and those things cost money. You should send them back for Cassandra and the kids." I made to move around him, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. The sight of him was a visceral shock. A plunge back into the cold water of the Luo River. Seeing me turn to leave, he quickly blocked my way again. Startled, I glared at him and he hurried to shove the bag into my arms. "Elias, what are you doing?" I snapped, my voice low and sharp. "If you keep this up, I'll call the police." The irony of the threat, spoken at the gates of a police academy, was not lost on me. His bloodshot eyes looked at me with a depth of exhaustion I had only ever seen in my own reflection at the end of my first life. Liliana, he said, the name a sigh. The day you fell into the water I knew. I knew you remembered our past life too. The admission hung in the air between us, stark and undeniable. He had confirmed the secret fear I had carried since that day. I couldn't come empty-handed. He gestured weakly to the pathetic bag of snacks now clutched in my stiff hands. So I bought these. Nothing else behind it, just guilt weighing on me wanting to make it up to you. These are just snacks, girls like them. Not worth much. Please just take them. A bitter, humorless laugh escaped me. It was all so absurd, so tragically cheap. Elias, in our last life you ruined me. This time you tried and failed. Aren't you afraid Cassandra will find out and divorce you? I was twisting the knife, wanting him to feel a fraction of the pain he had caused. He lowered his head, studying the cracks in the pavement. Cassandra's already gone, he muttered. She couldn't handle the hardship in the village and left. My mother, she got so angry she passed away. I just finished the funeral. He looked up and for a fleeting second, I saw the genuine crushing weight of his loss. Now I'm scrambling to pull together tuition for my 3 sons. Liliana, I know you look down on me now and I don't expect forgiveness. But only now do I see my true feelings. I like you, Liliana. The words were so grotesquely misplaced, so utterly selfish, that any pity I might have felt evaporated instantly. He wasn't here out of remorse. He was here because his life was in ruins and he was looking for a soft place to land. He saw my rising star and wanted to hitch his broken wagon to it. You're only unwilling to accept how far you've fallen, I said, my voice cold and flat. My life is good now and I don't want any ties to you. If you truly feel guilty, the best thing you can do is never show up again. Just then a group of my female classmates passed by, their cheerful chatter cutting through the tense atmosphere. Liliana, is this guy here to sell something? One of them asked, eyeing Elias's disheveled appearance with distaste. Don't buy it. So many scammers around. Come on, let's go get lunch. The times had changed. I was no longer a vulnerable village girl. I was a police cadet surrounded by friends. Embarrassment flickered across Elias's face, a deep, humiliated red creeping up his neck. He was a ghost and he had no power here. Without another word, he seemed to shrink into himself. He turned and slunk away, his shoulders slumped, fading into the stream of students until he finally disappeared from sight. I stood there for a long moment, the plastic bag of cheap snacks feeling obscene in my hands. I walked to the nearest trash bin and dropped it in. The clatter of the candies against the metal lid a final, dismissive sound. A strange calm settled over me, deeper and more profound than any I had felt before. In my past life, I had begged for scraps of love and endured endless humiliation, only to die miserably in my mother's arms. But in this life I had cut away every rotten tie. I had faced the ghost of my past and watched him retreat, powerless. I tightened my grip on my textbooks, the solid weight of my future, and followed my classmates toward the dining hall. The sun was high, warm against my face, the campus alive with the sound of laughter and confident footsteps. For the first time in a long while, in either lifetime, my future felt truly, completely, and irrevocably mine. The encounter with Elias solidified my resolve. I buried myself even deeper in my studies, determined to wring every drop of opportunity from this borrowed life. I excelled in criminology, surprised myself with a knack for forensic science, and even found a certain grim satisfaction in physical training, building a strength that was both physical and mental. A month after Elias's appearance, a message came from the gatehouse. I had a visitor. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. Had he returned? I walked to the gate with slow, reluctant steps, rehearsing the words to have him removed. But it wasn't Elias. Nathan Young stood just inside the gates, out of uniform. He wore a simple white shirt and dark trousers, and he looked somehow younger, more approachable. In his hands he held a small, neatly wrapped package and a paper bag from a well-known bakery in the provincial capital. "Senior," I said, the title feeling both formal and strangely intimate on my tongue. I couldn't stop the smile that spread across my face. "This is a surprise." "Liliana," he replied, his own smile easy and genuine. "I had a meeting at the City Public Security Bureau nearby. My mother insisted I bring you these." He held out the package. "She's been knitting. Said a student from her hometown could always use another scarf. And the pastries are from me." I remember the food here is functional. I took the gifts, touched by the simple, uncomplicated kindness. Please thank your mother for me. That's incredibly thoughtful. I hesitated. Would you like to see the campus? I have a break before my next class. His eyes lit up. I'd like that very much. We walked along the tree-lined paths and I showed him the grand library, the sprawling training grounds, the austere dormitories. It wasn't a tour a boy would give a girl. It was one aspiring officer showing another their shared territory. We talked about classes, about instructors he remembered, about the changes to the curriculum. The conversation was easy, flowing naturally from one topic to the next. As we passed the parade ground, he stopped, his hands in his pockets, and looked out at the empty field. My mother talks about you, you know, he said, his tone conversational. She says you have a fierce spirit, that you remind her of herself when she was young. I felt a blush creep up my neck. Your mother is too kind. I was just surviving. He turned to look at me, his gaze direct and thoughtful. Survival is one thing. Thriving is another. You're thriving here, Liliana. It suits you. He paused. My mother also mentioned, she's been pestering you about me. Now my face was fully aflame. She might have mentioned something, I stammered, looking down at my shoes. He laughed softly. Don't mind her. She's been desperate for me to settle down since my last relationship ended. She thinks every single woman under 30 is a potential candidate. His tone was light, but then it softened. But for what it's worth, I'm glad it's you she's chosen to champion. My head snapped up. He was looking at me not as a project or a victim, but with a warm, open curiosity that made my heart skip a beat. Before I could formulate a response, the academy bell tolled, signaling the end of the break. The spell was broken. I have to go, I said regretfully. Tactics class. Of course, he said, nodding. I shouldn't keep you. He handed me the bakery bag. Don't share these with your roommates. You earned them. I took the bag, our fingers brushing briefly. A simple, accidental touch, but it sent a jolt of warmth through me that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. Thank you, Nathan. For everything. The use of his first name felt daring. His smile widened. You're welcome, Liliana. Focus on your studies. I'll see you when you're home for the break. I watched him walk away, his stride confident and sure, until he turned a corner and was gone. I stood there for a long moment, the scent of sugar and butter from the bakery bag filling the air, a feeling of giddy, impossible hope blooming in my chest. The past was a ghost. The future was a blank page. And for the first time, the thought of writing on it didn't fill me with dread, but with a thrilling, terrifying excitement. The rest of the semester passed in a blur of focused intensity. Nathan's visit had been a catalyst, a glimpse of a future that was not just about escaping the past, but about building something positive. I studied with a renewed ferocity, my scores topping the class in several subjects. The past and its ghosts were locked away in a deep corner of my mind, only emerging in the quietest moments before sleep. When the winter break finally arrived, I packed my bag with a light heart, the carefully folded hand-knitted scarf from Nathan's mother tucked safely inside. The journey home felt different this time. The landscape, once a backdrop to my suffering, now just looked like home. My mother was waiting for me at the door, her face wreathed in smiles that reached her eyes. Our small house felt warmer, brighter. She fussed over me, declaring I was too thin and piling my bowl with food. In the evenings we sat by the stove and I told her about my classes, my friends, about the sprawling, intimidating city. I carefully edited out the encounter with Elias and the details of Nathan's visit, speaking of him only as a helpful senior. A few days into the break, as I was helping her patch a leak in the roof, a familiar, official-looking car pulled up outside our gate. My heart gave a little leap. Nathan Young stepped out, followed by an older woman with a kind, intelligent face and the same warm eyes as her son. Liliana. Director Young is here, my mother called up, her voice a mixture of excitement and nerves. I climbed down the ladder, dusting off my hands. Director Young, I said formally, then my eyes shifted to the woman. And you must be Mrs. Young. Thank you so much for the scarf. It's beautiful. Nonsense, child, Mrs. Young said, her voice brisk but friendly. She looked me up and down, taking in my work clothes and the smudge of dirt on my cheek with apparent approval. A girl who isn't afraid of hard work. I like that. And call me Auntie May. My mother, beaming, ushered them inside. Over tea the conversation was easy. Auntie May did most of the talking, asking my mother about the village, the harvest, sharing stories of her own youth. Nathan sat quietly, occasionally adding a comment or sharing a look with me that felt like a private joke. He was comfortable, domestic in a way I had never experienced. As they were leaving, Nathan lingered by the door while his mother chatted with mine. "There's a new case," he said, his voice low. "In the next county over. A series of burglaries. The local force is stumped. I was asked to consult." "That's wonderful," I said. "Your reputation is growing." He shrugged modestly. "It's just work. But the MO is clever. Sophisticated. It made me think of some of the theoretical cases we discussed in your criminology class. I have the file. I thought, if you weren't busy you might like to take a look. A fresh perspective." He was offering me a glimpse into his world, not as a victim or a student but as a potential colleague. My mind, hungry for a real-world challenge, leapt at the idea. "I'd be honored," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled. "I'll have a copy sent over." The file arrived the next day. For the next 3 days I devoured it. I spread the reports, the maps, the witness statements on our kitchen table, ignoring my mother's curious glances. The burglaries were indeed clever. The perpetrator bypassed sophisticated alarms, left no fingerprints, and seemed to have an uncanny knowledge of the victims' schedules. The local police were chasing their tails. It was on the third night, as I was rereading the list of stolen items for the 10th time, that a pattern emerged. It wasn't about the value. A cheap silver locket was taken, but an expensive gold watch was left behind. A specific brand of imported pen was stolen from a study, but cash in the same drawer was ignored. The perpetrator wasn't a thief. He was a collector. He was taking trophies that had personal, sentimental meaning. And the items, when I cross-referenced them with the victims' backgrounds, all seemed connected to a specific failed local business venture from 5 years prior. A textile factory that had gone bankrupt, leaving many investors, including several of the victims, out of pocket. The disgruntled investor theory was too obvious. The police had already investigated it. But what if it wasn't an investor? What if it was someone who had worked there? Someone who felt personally betrayed not just by the financial loss, but by the collapse of the community the factory represented? I thought of the sophisticated bypass of the alarm systems. A factory would have had similar systems. A maintenance worker. An electrician. I worked through the night, my fingers stained with ink, my mind racing. By dawn I had a theory. I drafted a concise report linking the stolen items to the factory's history and outlining the profile of the perpetrator. A former employee, likely in a technical role, male between 35 and 50, who felt a deep sense of personal injustice. I sent the report to Nathan by a special courier, my heart pounding. I was just a first-year student. Was I being presumptuous? The response came that evening. It wasn't a letter. It was Nathan himself, his face alight with a fierce, proud energy. "Liliana," he said, barely over the threshold. "We got him." My breath caught. "What?" "Your profile was perfect. We cross-referenced the former factory employees with technical skills. One man, a former electrical engineer who lost his life savings, matched perfectly. We staked out his house and caught him trying to dispose of the trophies. He confessed everything. He said he wasn't stealing. He was reclaiming what was owed." He looked at me, his admiration plain and undisguised. "You have a real gift. An instinct I've only seen in detectives twice your age." The praise washed over me, warm and validating. It wasn't just about being smart. It was about being useful, about making a tangible difference. "My commander was impressed," Nathan continued, his tone becoming slightly more hesitant. "He said if you're interested, there's an internship program this summer at the district headquarters. It's competitive, but after this, I think you'd have a strong chance. An internship. A real foot in the door." It was more than I had ever dared to hope for. "Thank you, Nathan," I whispered, emotion thick in my throat. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll apply," he said, his smile gentle. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the high of the day slowly subsiding, a colder, more familiar thought intruded. My success, this bright new future I was building, was predicated on the ruins of Elias's life. I had taken his money, exposed his crimes, and indirectly caused the collapse of his family. A part of me, the part that had been broken and discarded in a previous life, felt a savage satisfaction. But another part, the part that was trying to become an officer of the law, wondered about the cost. The web of cause and effect was vast and intricate. I had torn myself free from one strand, but I was now being woven into another. And somewhere in the shadows, I knew the spider I had displaced was still waiting, hungry and vengeful. My victory over Elias felt complete, but the consequences of that victory were still unfolding. I had a future now, a promising one, but it was a future that had made a powerful enemy. The spring semester began with a new sense of purpose. The internship application became my obsession. I pored over past cases, studied procedural manuals, and practiced my interview skills with anyone who would listen. Nathan's belief in me was a constant, warm presence in the back of my mind, a beacon I steered towards. I heard snippets of news from home carried in my mother's letters. Cassandra was still in the village, a sullen, resentful figure, struggling to manage Elias's 3 unruly sons and the memory of his bedridden mother. The villagers, once sympathetic to her, now mostly shunned her, their pity eroded by the truth of her actions. Elias, she wrote, was rumored to be doing hard labor on a construction site in the provincial capital, not far from my academy. The knowledge was an itch between my shoulder blades, a constant low-grade awareness. One rainy Tuesday I was in the academy library, buried in a dense text on criminal psychology, when a feeling of being watched crept over me. I looked up, my eyes scanning the quiet rows of carrels and bookshelves. There was no one. Shaking off the feeling, I returned to my book. The feeling returned the next day and the next. A shadow in my peripheral vision that vanished when I turned. The sense of a presence just outside the circle of light from my dorm room window. I began to vary my routes to walk only with groups of friends. I was being paranoid, I told myself. The stress of the upcoming internship interview was getting to me. The interview was held at the district headquarters, an imposing building of concrete and glass. Nathan was there but in an official capacity, and he gave me only a brief, professional nod. The panel was intimidating. Senior detectives, a captain, and a representative from the city's public security bureau. The questions were sharp, designed to probe not just my knowledge but my judgment, my ethics, my temperament. Toward the end, the bureau representative, a stern-faced woman, leaned forward. "Miss Reed, your application is remarkable. Top grades, a letter of recommendation from Director Young, and an unsolicited analytical report that directly led to an arrest. However, your file also notes a significant personal history, an attempted fraud and assault. How can we be sure this past won't compromise your objectivity or your ability to serve?" This was the question I had dreaded and prepared for. I took a slow breath, meeting her gaze squarely. "Ma'am," I said, my voice clear and steady in the quiet room. "That past is precisely why I am here. I have seen firsthand how the absence of justice can destroy lives. I have been a victim of manipulation and cruelty. That experience didn't break me. It forged in me an unshakable belief in the rule of law. It taught me to look beyond the obvious, to question convenient narratives. I don't see my past as a liability. I see it as the foundation of my commitment. I want to ensure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." The room was silent for a long moment. The stern-faced woman gave a slow, deliberate nod. "A compelling answer, Miss Reed." A week later, the official letter arrived. I had been accepted. The joy was electric, overwhelming. I called my mother, my voice cracking with emotion as I read her the letter. I wanted to call Nathan to thank him, but I forced myself to wait. That evening, celebrating with a few close friends at a small noodle shop just off campus, the feeling of being watched returned, stronger than ever. This time, when I casually glanced toward the window, I saw him. Elias. He was standing across the street, partially hidden in a doorway, but his eyes were fixed on me. He wasn't the broken, pathetic man from before. This was something else. His face was thinner, harder, his expression not one of pleading or guilt, but of cold, simmering observation. He was studying me, tracking my movements like a predator. My blood ran cold. The laughter of my friends faded into a dull roar. He knew where I was, who I was with. He had been the shadow. One of my friends followed my gaze. "Liliana? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Nothing. Just thought I recognized someone." I didn't. The man across the street was a stranger, forged in the fires of his own ruin. The ghost of my past was gone. In its place was a very real, very present threat. The next day I went to see Nathan at his office. I told him everything. The feeling of being watched, the sighting of Elias, the cold, calculating look in his eyes. Nathan's expression grew grim. He listened without interruption, his hands steepled under his chin. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. "This is concerning," he said finally. "His behavior has escalated from a pathetic attempt at contact to what sounds like surveillance. Stalking." He stood up and paced to the window. "I'll have a word with the patrol units near your academy. They can keep a more watchful eye. And I'll see what I can find out about his current situation. But Liliana." He turned to face me, his eyes serious. "Be careful. You've achieved everything he lost. In his mind, your success is built on his failure. That is a dangerous narrative for a desperate man." I knew he was right. The battle I thought was over was simply entering a new, more insidious phase. As I walked back to campus, the spring sun was warm on my skin, but a chill had settled deep in my bones. I had the internship. I had Nathan's support. I had a future brighter than any I had ever imagined. But I also had a shadow. And I knew, with a certainty that was as cold as the Luo River, that Elias Vance was not yet done with me. The story of my second chance was still being written, and the next chapter would be a test not just of my mind, but of my will to survive, to truly live in the light I had fought so hard to reach. The sun was shining, but the darkness had not conceded. It was waiting. The end.